The story of Tupac Shakur is one of the most talked about stories in music history. Even decades after his death, people still argue about who he really was. Some remember him as a dangerous rapper who was always surrounded by trouble. Others remember a thoughtful writer who spoke about pain, poverty, and injustice in a way very few artists ever did. The truth about Tupac sits somewhere in the middle of all that noise. He was complicated. He was emotional. He was angry at the world sometimes. But he was also deeply loyal, deeply sensitive, and extremely aware of the struggles around him. The life he lived was fast, chaotic, and often dangerous. Fame came quickly, and the spotlight never left him alone. But if there was one person who truly understood Tupac better than anyone else, it was his mother, Afeni Shakur. Afeni knew Tupac long before the fame, before the albums, before the headlines, before the police cases and the rumors. She knew the quiet boy who loved writing poems and acting on stage. She knew the child who watched the adults around him struggle with addiction, poverty, and political battles. For many years after Tupac was killed in 1996, Afeni stayed careful about what she said publicly. She protected her son's name and fought to keep control of his music and legacy. But as the years passed, she began speaking more openly about the life Tupac lived and the pain he carried. Before she died, Afeni finally spoke about things she had kept inside for a long time. Afeni didn't speak like a celebrity giving a polished interview. She spoke like a mother who had watched her child grow up in a world that was often cruel and unforgiving. And according to her, many people never truly understood the man Tupac became. To understand Tupac, you have to go back to the very beginning. Back before the music, before the fame, before the controversies. Back to the moment he was born into a life already filled with struggle. Tupac Shakur was born on June 16, 1971, in New York City. But his story actually began long before that day. His mother, Afeni Shakur, was already living a life filled with political activism and constant pressure from the government. In the late 1960s, she was a member of the Black Panther Party, a group that fought against racial injustice and police brutality in the United States. The Black Panthers believed in protecting black communities and demanding equal rights. Their activism made them powerful voices in the civil rights movement, but it also made them targets. Police watched them closely. Government agencies investigated them constantly. Many members were arrested. Afeni was one of them. In 1969, she and several other Panther members were arrested in a major case that became known as the Panther 21 trial. The government accused them of planning attacks against police stations and public buildings in New York. Afeni was only in her early 20s at the time. And during that trial, something else was happening in her life. She was pregnant. She spent months in jail while preparing to defend herself in court. Instead of hiring a lawyer, Afeni decided to represent herself during the trial. She studied law books, took notes, and questioned witnesses directly in the courtroom. Many people who watched the trial were surprised by how confident she was. She spoke clearly and challenged the accusations against her. After months of hearings and testimony, the jury reached a decision. Afeni Shakur and the other defendants were found not guilty. Just weeks later, she gave birth to her son. That baby was Tupac. His original name at birth was Lesane Parrish Crooks. Not long after, Afeni changed it to Tupac Amaru Shakur. The name Tupac came from Tupac Amaru II, a revolutionary leader in Peru who fought against Spanish rule in the 1700s. Afeni believed names had power. She wanted her son to carry a name that represented resistance and strength. But life after the trial was not easy. Afeni was a young single mother. She had just gone through a long legal battle. Money was tight, and stability was hard to find. Tupac grew up surrounded by people who were deeply involved in political activism. Many of the adults around him had spent time in jail or were constantly dealing with police attention. For a child, it was a confusing environment. There were passionate conversations about justice and racism happening around him all the time. There were also moments of fear and uncertainty. Afeni later said that she tried her best to raise Tupac with pride in his identity and awareness of the world around him. But she also admitted that the environment they lived in was unstable. The family moved often. Sometimes they stayed with friends. Sometimes they struggled to pay rent. The financial stress was always there. Afeni also began battling personal problems during those years. The pressure from the trial and the life she had lived in the movement began catching up with her. At times, she struggled with drug addiction. For Tupac, growing up meant seeing both sides of life very early. He saw the strength of political activism, but he also saw the damage that stress, poverty, and addiction could cause inside a family. Even as a young child, Tupac was observant. People who knew him later often said he seemed older than his age. He paid attention to everything happening around him. He listened to the conversations adults had. He watched how people treated each other. Those early experiences stayed with him. Years later, when Tupac began writing lyrics and poems, many of those memories showed up in his words. The anger, the frustration, the awareness of injustice. All of it started during those early years. Life in New York City during the 1970s was not easy for many families living in poor neighborhoods. Crime rates were high, jobs were scarce, and many communities felt abandoned by the system. Tupac grew up seeing that reality every day. Afeni tried to teach him that education and awareness were important. She encouraged him to read books and understand history. She wanted him to know that his voice mattered. But the environment around them was constantly pulling in different directions. Sometimes Tupac saw strength and pride. Other times he saw pain and struggle. The mix of those two worlds shaped the person he would eventually become. And even though he was still just a child, the seeds of the artist he would grow into were already beginning to form. Long before the world knew his name, Tupac Shakur was simply a boy growing up inside a complicated, unpredictable life. As Tupac Shakur grew older, life at home became increasingly unstable. His mother, Afeni Shakur, tried to hold things together, but the pressure of poverty and the emotional weight from years of political struggle never fully disappeared. Money was often short. Some months were harder than others. Rent was difficult to keep up with, and the family moved frequently from place to place. Stability was rare. For a young child, constant moving meant constantly starting over. New apartment, new neighborhood, new school. Tupac had to adjust quickly wherever he went. He watched adults struggle to survive while trying to figure out his own place in the world. Afeni later admitted that during some of those years she struggled with addiction. It was a painful period for both of them. There were days when she tried to stay strong and focused, and there were days when things simply fell apart. Tupac saw all of it. Despite the chaos at home, he was a thoughtful and curious kid. Teachers often noticed that he paid close attention during class. He liked reading and writing more than many children his age. Poetry became one of the first ways he started expressing himself. Sometimes he would sit quietly and write about what he saw around him. The violence in the neighborhood, the struggles people faced, the confusion he felt watching the world around him. But Tupac was not just quiet and reflective. He also had a strong personality. Friends later remembered that he could be charming, funny, and extremely confident. He liked performing and entertaining people. If there was an audience, Tupac often wanted to be in front of it. During these early years, the family eventually moved from New York City to Baltimore. That move would become one of the most important changes in Tupac's young life. Baltimore offered him something he had not experienced before, a chance to focus on creativity and art in a more structured environment. But the struggles he carried from childhood did not disappear. They followed him everywhere, and they would soon begin shaping the artist he was becoming. In Baltimore, Tupac Shakur enrolled at the Baltimore School for the Arts. For the first time in his life, he was surrounded by students who were passionate about creative work. The school focused heavily on music, theater, dance, and visual arts. Tupac quickly found where he belonged. He studied acting, poetry, and even ballet. Many people are surprised to learn that Tupac trained seriously in classical performance arts. He practiced stage movement, studied Shakespeare, and worked on developing his voice as a performer. Classmates remembered him as extremely dedicated. When he believed in something, he threw all his energy into it. One of his closest friends at the school was Jada Pinkett Smith. The two connected quickly. They spent hours talking about music, writing, and the struggles they both saw growing up in America. Their friendship became one of the most meaningful relationships in Tupac's early life. Teachers also noticed something special about him. He wasn't just talented, he was expressive in a way that felt real and emotional. When he performed on stage, he didn't hold back. The poetry he wrote during this time often talked about loneliness, poverty, and identity. Even as a teenager, Tupac seemed deeply aware of the world's problems. But while Baltimore helped him develop as an artist, life outside school remained difficult. His family was still dealing with financial problems. The stability he felt at school didn't always exist at home. Eventually, another major move came. Afeni decided to leave Baltimore and relocate again. This time, they were heading across the country. When Tupac Shakur arrived in Oakland, California, everything felt different. Oakland had a strong political history and a powerful hip-hop culture beginning to grow in the streets. The city had also been one of the original centers of the Black Panther Party, something that connected deeply to Afeni's past. But life there was far from easy. The neighborhood Tupac lived in faced high crime rates, gang activity, and constant tension with police. Young people growing up there often felt trapped between limited opportunities and dangerous environments. Tupac quickly adapted to the streets around him. He made new friends and started spending time around local musicians and performers. Music was becoming more than just a hobby. It was turning into a possible future. During this period, Tupac began writing rap lyrics more seriously. Hip-hop was spreading rapidly across the country, and it offered a way for young people to talk about their experiences openly. Tupac realized that rap could combine everything he loved: poetry, performance, storytelling, and emotion. He wrote constantly, notebook after notebook filled with verses about racism, poverty, police violence, and life in struggling neighborhoods. People who heard his early raps noticed something unique. His voice carried anger, but it also carried intelligence and emotion. He didn't just brag or talk about street life. He tried to explain why things were the way they were. Eventually, those talents led him toward his first real opportunity in the music industry. Tupac Shakur's entry into the professional music world happened almost by accident. In the early 1990s, he connected with the rap group Digital Underground. The group was already gaining popularity in hip-hop, known for their energetic style and creative performances. At first, Tupac joined them as a backup dancer and roadie. It wasn't glamorous work. He helped carry equipment, danced on stage, and supported the group however he could. But it gave him something extremely valuable: a chance to learn how the music industry worked from the inside. He watched recording sessions. He studied how songs were produced. He observed how artists handled fame and pressure. Eventually, members of the group began noticing his talent as a rapper. They allowed him to perform small verses during shows, and audiences responded immediately. His voice was powerful, emotional, and impossible to ignore. Soon after, Tupac released his first solo album, Tupacalypse Now. The album immediately caught attention. Unlike many rap records at the time, Tupac's lyrics were raw and political. He talked openly about police brutality, poverty, racism, and the daily struggles of young people in America's inner cities. Songs like Brenda's Got a Baby told heartbreaking stories about real situations happening in poor communities. Not everyone appreciated what he was saying. Some politicians and media figures criticized the album, accusing Tupac of encouraging violence and disrespect for authority. His music quickly became part of a national debate about hip-hop and its influence. But for many listeners, Tupac's words felt honest. They heard someone speaking about their reality without hiding the pain. And almost overnight, Tupac Shakur began transforming from a young rapper trying to be heard into one of the most controversial voices in American music. By the mid-1990s, Tupac Shakur was one of the most talked about artists in the country. His albums were selling fast, his face was everywhere, and his opinions were constantly making headlines. But his life was also becoming more chaotic. Tupac was involved in several legal cases during this time. Arguments, fights, and accusations followed him almost everywhere he went. The media covered every detail, often painting him as a dangerous celebrity who could not stay out of trouble. In 1994, everything changed. Tupac was convicted in a sexual assault case in New York City. He insisted that he was innocent, but the court found him guilty of abuse charges connected to the incident. He was sentenced to prison. For someone who had just become one of the biggest voices in hip-hop, the sudden fall was shocking. One day he was performing on stages across the country, and the next he was sitting inside a prison cell. While incarcerated, Tupac spent a lot of time thinking about the people around him and the choices he had made. He felt betrayed by some friends who he believed had abandoned him during the trial. He also became increasingly angry at the music industry and the media. But even in prison, his career continued. His album Me Against the World was released while he was still locked up. The record quickly climbed the charts and became a massive success. It was a strange moment in music history. Tupac became the first artist to have a #1 album while serving time in prison. The songs on the album sounded darker and more reflective than his earlier work. His lyrics talked about paranoia, loneliness, and survival. Afeni Shakur later said that this period was extremely painful for her. Watching her son go from rising star to prison inmate was heartbreaking. But she also believed the experience changed him. Prison forced Tupac to slow down and think about the direction his life was heading. Still, the calm didn't last long. Because while Tupac was in prison, someone else was already planning his next move. In 1995, Suge Knight, the powerful head of Death Row Records, stepped in with an offer. Knight arranged to pay Tupac's bail and help secure his release from prison. In return, Tupac would sign a contract with Death Row Records and release new music under the label. Tupac agreed. Soon after leaving prison, he flew straight to Los Angeles and began recording almost immediately. The energy inside Death Row was intense. The label already had major stars and huge influence in the rap world. Tupac worked at an unbelievable pace. Within months, he released the double album All Eyes on Me. The project became one of the most successful rap albums ever released. Songs from the album were everywhere. Radio stations played them constantly. Music videos ran non-stop on television. But while Tupac's fame grew even bigger, the tension inside the hip-hop world was also rising. During this time, the rivalry between East Coast and West Coast rap was reaching a boiling point. Artists, producers, and fans were choosing sides. Tupac became one of the most vocal figures in the conflict. He publicly accused the notorious b.i.g. of betraying him after a shooting incident that had happened in 1994. Tupac believed people in the East Coast rap scene had set him up. Biggie denied those claims, but the feud continued to grow. Songs, interviews, and public appearances all added fuel to the fire. Fans followed every word. What had started as a personal disagreement slowly turned into one of the most famous rivalries in music history. Afeni Shakur later said she worried constantly during this period. She believed the people around Tupac were encouraging his anger instead of calming him down. Fame was moving fast, money was pouring in, and the environment around him was becoming more dangerous by the day. But Tupac seemed unstoppable. He recorded music constantly, filmed movies, and traveled across the country performing for huge crowds. Yet behind the scenes, the pressure was building. And that pressure would lead to one of the most tragic nights in hip-hop history. On September 7, 1996, Tupac Shakur traveled to Las Vegas. He went there to attend a boxing match between Mike Tyson and Bruce Seldon. The fight was a major event, and many celebrities were present. Tupac sat near the ring with Suge Knight and other members of the Death Row Records team. The fight ended quickly with Tyson winning by knockout. After the match, Tupac and his group moved through the MGM Grand Hotel. At one point inside the building, a confrontation happened. Security cameras later showed Tupac and several others attacking a man in the hallway. The fight lasted only a few moments before security staff broke it up. After leaving the hotel, Tupac and Suge Knight got into a black BMW and drove along the Las Vegas Strip. They were heading toward a nightclub where Tupac planned to make an appearance. Traffic was heavy that night. At around 11:15 p.m., while the car was stopped at a red light, another vehicle pulled up beside them. Shots were fired. Several bullets struck Tupac in the chest, arm, and thigh. The car quickly sped away from the scene. Paramedics rushed Tupac to the hospital. Doctors worked to stabilize him, but his injuries were severe. For 6 days he remained in critical condition. On September 13, 1996, Tupac Shakur died at the age of 25. The murder shocked the entire music industry. Fans gathered outside hospitals, radio stations, and music stores across the country. People struggled to believe that one of the most powerful voices in hip-hop had been silenced so suddenly. Despite investigations by police, the case remained unsolved. Rumors, theories, and accusations began circulating almost immediately. Even decades later, many questions about Tupac's death still remain unanswered. After Tupac's death, Afeni Shakur was left with an unimaginable loss. She had spent years watching her son rise from a struggling childhood to international fame. And now she had to face a world without him. For a long time, Afeni avoided speaking too deeply about what happened. She focused instead on protecting Tupac's music and legacy. She created organizations to manage his recordings and ensure that his work would continue reaching new audiences. But as the years passed, she slowly began opening up in interviews. Afeni spoke about the young boy she remembered, the child who loved poetry and acting long before the world knew him as a rapper. She explained that Tupac was far more sensitive than people realized. The anger many people saw in his music came from real pain he carried throughout his life. Growing up in poverty, watching his mother struggle with addiction, feeling constant pressure from fame and public expectations. All of it stayed with him. Afeni also talked about the people who surrounded Tupac during his final years. She suggested that some individuals benefited from his fame but did not truly care about his well-being. According to her, Tupac often felt alone despite being surrounded by crowds. She never claimed to know exactly who killed her son, but she made it clear that the environment around him had become extremely dangerous. Before her death in 2016, Afeni continued telling people that Tupac was more than the headlines. He was a writer, he was a thinker, and most of all, he was her son. Even after everything that happened, she believed the world still had not fully understood who Tupac Shakur really was.